In today's video, I'm putting every single starting small forward for the 2024 NBA season into a tier list from the S tier all the way down to the ass tier. So look, leave a comment down below and tell me what you guys think. Where did I fuck up? Because I know there's going to be some salty motherfuckers out there. Look, let's get right into things. If you like the video, then like the fucking video. Subscribe to the channel. Let's start off with the S tier. You have to put Jayson Tatum in there, who, in my opinion, my non-biased opinion, as you can very much see, he is the best small forward in today's league. I feel like he's the most slept-on two-way wing because he's absolutely elite defensively, but that's something that doesn't really get talked about enough. He steps up his play every single season. Obviously, he has a few flaws. You know, he does get rightfully criticized for some of his playoff performances, but with all that being said, he's still relatively young and just entering his prime, and he's already the best small forward in the league. So he's definitely an S-tier player for me. Next up, you got to put in the king, LeBron James. Even as a Celtics fan, you know, I feel like what people seem to forget, especially with this season, is that pre-foot injury, LeBron was as good as he ever was, man. This guy was, when he was dunking, his head was at the rim. He was still very much playing at an elite level. Obviously, when his foot got injured, that's what people start to really remember, you know, his playoff performances where he wasn't the most efficient, didn't look as explosive, things like that. Hopefully with a full offseason with rest and a proper training camp, you would assume his foot, you know, hopefully got better after seeing the LeBron James of feet or whatever it may be. But right now, until I see more signs of decline, like don't get me wrong, he is declining a little bit. He's still very much right up there in terms of the best small forwards in the league. And if you're talking about someone leading your team in a 7-game playoff series, there's only a handful of players you would pick above LeBron. And I'll tell you right now, Jayson Tatum isn't one of them. So he's definitely an S-tier player for me. Rounding up the S-tier, I've got KD. You know, this bloke, one of the greatest, probably the most gifted scorer in NBA history. It's incredible what he's done since coming back from that ruptured Achilles. Pretty much no one in NBA history has come back and played just as good, if not better, than pre-Achilles injury. And the jury is still out there in terms of whether he can lead a team to a championship as the number one guy, because quite frankly, he hasn't done jack shit since winning with Golden State. Obviously, he couldn't get it done in OKC, couldn't get it done in Brooklyn, even with Kyrie and James Harden. And now he's on to Phoenix. He's got D-Book, he's got Bradley Beal, he's got all these pieces around him. Yeah, it still remains to be seen. I don't think they're a championship team, but I mean, Kevin Durant's as talented as they come, so he's still an S-tier player for me. That rounds up the S tier. Look, let's move on to the A tier. I've got Jimmy G Buckets to kick things off. He's a borderline S tier player, but for me, he's an A tier. Now, there's going to be some salty motherfuckers in the comment section going, oh, Jimmy Butler is an S tier player. He's better than Jayson Tatum. Look, listen here, man. The thing with Jimmy Butler and Jayson Tatum is that they're on two different level fields when it comes to NBA fans. I feel like Jayson Tatum is someone who the eyes are always on him every single postseason. If he doesn't make the Eastern Conference Finals or make the NBA Finals, it's a complete failure. Whereas with Jimmy Butler, look, he cruises through the regular season. That's why the Heat sometimes are a lower seed team like they were this last season. They were in the play-in, right? They even lost the first play-in game. Obviously, they made the NBA Finals, but he's not held to the same standard as Jayson Tatum is because he kind of cruises through the regular season. And in the playoffs, when Jayson Tatum doesn't show up for whatever reason, you know, let's say game 7 against the Heat, he gets caught out for being, you know, doesn't show up in big time games, all that kind of stuff, even when he has a track record of actually doing so. But Jimmy Butler, on the other hand, let's be real, if you put your bias aside, these playoffs, outside of that Milwaukee series, which he was definitely amazing, and if you judge him by that alone, he's an S-tier player, he was relatively up and down through the rest of the playoffs ever since injuring his ankle against the Knicks. But that doesn't, you know, him not playing up to standard doesn't get mentioned enough when it comes to when you're critiquing Jimmy as a player. Like in the Eastern Conference Finals, for example, I truly believe that Caleb Martin was the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, not Jimmy Butler. So I feel like also the fact that whenever the Heat overperform, it's, oh yes, Jimmy carried these fucking bums. But when they underperform, it's never about Jimmy. It's always, why didn't Jimmy have enough help? You know, sometimes, you know, you can kind of point the finger to Jimmy as well. I'm not saying Jimmy's not a good player, but, you know, these two, Tatum and Jimmy, are kind of compared differently. And if you put your bias aside, you look at the two players as a whole, Jayson Tatum's a better player. That's not to say Jayson Tatum would carry the Heat further, because Jimmy Butler would absolutely do that and he's proven it. But if you look at them one-on-one in a vacuum, Tatum is better. Bias aside, hand on heart, I try not to be biased as much as possible. That's just the truth. So, but with that being said, Jimmy Butler's still an A-tier player for me. Look, I am just going to go randomly throughout this list. You know what? Another A-tier player that I just stumbled across is this fella over here, Brandon Ingram. You know, he is someone who's obviously dealt with some injury problems and things like that. But when he's healthy, there's no doubt this guy's a fucking weapon. Obviously, two-way player, can even function as a point guard, give you 25, 27 points a night, only getting better and better. I honestly feel like out of all the small forwards in this list, he's one of the most slept-on players. And maybe part of it is because he plays in a small market. He doesn't have the big name appeal as a Jimmy Butler, Tatum, LeBron, KD, or even some of the other guys below him, but he's right up there, man. So he's an A-tier player for me. Wrapping up that A-tier, I feel like between Jimmy and Brandon Ingram is Kawhi. Now, the biggest question mark with Kawhi every single season is his health, obviously. He can't seem to remain healthy. Even if he load manages for a full fucking season, his knee just breaks down in the playoffs. So, but that aside, Kawhi, he's still a damn good player. Obviously, he's fell off a little bit defensively, but offensively can very much still carry the Clippers. When the Clippers are healthy, which is a big when or big if, you know, they're a fucking dangerous team. But as long as Kawhi is healthy, which, you know, you can't really assume, he's an A-tier player, borderline S-tier. But we just haven't seen that Toronto level of play from Kawhi since, well, I guess Toronto. But he's not slipped into a B-tier, that's for sure. So those three guys kind of round up my A-tier. Now, the rest of the players, I'm just going to chuck in random orders. Look, first guy on my list that I can see, I've got Dillon Brooks. If you're talking about FIBA and Dillon Brooks, man, he's right up here. That dude was fucking balling out for Canada. But NBA Dillon Brooks against, you know, other NBA players, I suppose. He's a D-tier starting small forward. Maybe a C-tier. You know what? I'll put him in the D-tier just because his shot IQ, bro. His basketball IQ as a whole. This guy was jacking up shots like no tomorrow. He doesn't care if he's 0 of 10 from 3. He's going to chuck up another 5 more shots, and that really hurts his team. Obviously, like I said, FIBA Dillon Brooks is a different story because he's not going 0 of 10 from 3. But we saw in the Lakers series, you know, he just wasn't hitting his shots. He was still talking shit, couldn't back it up. And because of that, I can't rank him any higher. That's the last we've seen from him in the NBA. So I have to put him in the D tier for now. DeMar DeRozan, standard B tier type player. Obviously, falls just short of that A tier, but you can't put him in the C tier. He is right up there amongst the best in the B tier. Kind of guaranteed to give you 25, 5, and 5 on pretty excellent mid-range shooting. Doesn't offer much of a three-point shot. Defense is a bit sketchy, but, you know, he's consistent. I'll give him that. Next up on my list, I've seen Michael Porter Jr. He's a lower tier, B tier guy for me. He is someone, obviously he's known for just chucking up shots when he catches it, doesn't pass the fucking ball. But in the finals, I really felt like he showed a lot of defensive potential. He was making a lot of good plays defensively, even when his shot wasn't falling. So you got to give him respect for that. And he's still young. He's only going to get better. So B tier feels right for him. Next up, we got Max Strus. I'm putting him in the ass tier, bro. I have voiced many, many times that I'm not a fan of the Max Strus signing for the Cleveland Cavaliers whatsoever. Reason being, if you're starting at small forward next to Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen, you need to take the offensive burden off Garland and Mitchell and be that third option offensively, unless Mobley steps into that role, of course. Max Strus doesn't do that, okay? He got benched in the playoffs for Duncan Robinson when his shot wasn't falling. He's atrocious on defense, extremely streaky as a shooter, and the Cavs gave him $64 million. And then defensively, if you're starting next to that undersized backcourt already, you better be able to kind of cover up for the defensive deficiencies. But worst of all, he's probably the worst defender out of the three, so I really don't see what the Cavs were thinking with that signing. So for that reason, I have to put him in the ass tier. I'm sorry, bro. Next up in the ass tier, Josh Okogie. Look, no disrespect to him. Fine defender. Three-point shot is a bit streaky at times. Very athletic. But if we're talking about starters, he is bottom of the barrel, man. He's one of the worst starting small forwards in the entire league. I've got both him and KD in this list, even though they both start for the Suns. Obviously because, you know, although KD starts at the 4, no one sees him as a power forward, so I'm putting him in the small forward list. But Josh Okogie, look, I think he's a fine player to come off the bench. He's probably not even a number one wing piece that you would like coming off your bench. It's probably like the second or third wing you'd like off your bench, but he's starting for the Suns because he fits the rest of their starting lineup. But overall, as a vacuum, he's an ass tier type player. I'm sorry, bro. Next up in the ass tier, I've got Deni Avdija. Look, the Wizards' entire lineup as a whole is probably all ass tier players, but so it's not just on Deni Avdija. You know, he has no business starting in the NBA. It's as simple as that. Sorry, brother. All right. Next up, we've got OG Anunoby. B tier for me. Feel like he's better than Michael Porter Jr. Not as good as DeMar DeRozan. You know, OG Anunoby, prototypical 3-and-D guy that gives you more than just 3-and-D. 6'8", 6'9", rangy, lengthy, can switch on to multiple guys, improving a lot offensively. Pretty much a player that every single team can use. He's a solid B tier type guy. There's a reason why he's mentioned in trade rumors all year round. He's a B tier. Next up, we've got Scottie Barnes. Right now, I have to put him in the C tier. I'm sorry, man. He isn't on the level of OG Anunoby. He might put up pretty numbers like 16, 7, and 7 or whatever it may be. But the truth is, he's not a great shooter. He's not a very efficient scorer as a whole. So a lot of his game is just purely off potential. And right now, he has all the potential in the world, but he hasn't put everything together. So he's a C tier. By the end of the season, maybe by the start of the season, you know, maybe he gets all his shit together as a B tier type guy, and I might look like a fucking idiot. But in my opinion, right now, respectfully, he's a C tier player. Next up, Bojan Bogdanovic. He's a C tier guy as well. You know, he's someone that will give you 20 points a night, you know, with some pretty good offense and offer pretty much next to nothing other than that. Doesn't really rebound, doesn't really distribute the ball well, doesn't play much defense. Like, if his shot isn't falling, what is he even doing out there? So he's a C tier type guy as well. But obviously, the reason why he's there is because he's very talented offensively. Next up, we've got Andrew Wiggins. I'm going to slot him around here. You can make the argument that he's better than OG Anunoby. You know what? Fuck it. I'll put him above OG just because he showed up on the biggest stage, locked down Jayson Tatum in the finals. The Warriors wouldn't have won without him. What can I say about him? He's a prototypical 3-and-D wing as well. I think he's really found his home in Golden State, away from Minnesota, where he's not pressured to score 20 points a night and be a number 1 or number 2 scoring option. He's really found his niche, carved out a great role as a 3-and-D supporting player. Yeah, there's nothing but good things to say about him, and he might not be the best number 1 pick, but he's definitely found his place, because if he was still Minnesota Andrew Wiggins being held to that standard, he would be low-key labeled a bust. So yeah, I feel like B's the right place for him. Next up, got Desmond Bane. I'm going to put him over here. Desmond Bane, one of the most underrated players in the entire league. T-Rex, man. Look, he's fucking jacked as well, by the way, but he's very underrated, man. He can function as a secondary playmaker. He's a great scorer. What did he average? Like 21, 22 points per game last season. We'll give you 4 or 5 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists as well, on excellent 3-point shooting. Really nothing bad to say about him. It's just that he's not better than anyone else above him. So I feel like I'll put him in the right place. So he's a B tier type guy for me as well. Look, next up, I can see Tobias Harris. I think he's a C tier guy, man. He's one of the most overpaid players in the league. Not his fault, obviously, kudos to him. But in Philadelphia, he's just a bit out of place. You know, he's being asked to be the 4th option offensively. And more often than not, he's just being relegated to a catch and shoot guy in the corner. That's his role nowadays. Whereas when he was in LA, he was excelling as a number 1 or number 2 option. So I felt like if we were saying that Tobias Harris is a B tier player, but right now, given his role in Philly, given that he's not really asked to do much and yet he still somewhat disappoints, I can't put him any higher than C. So he will go there, maybe a bit behind Scottie. Next up, Khris Middleton. This one's a tough guy to rank, man. Full healthy Khris Middleton has a very strong case to be an A tier player, but we haven't seen that in a while. So I'm putting him in the B tier for now. We know what he's capable of. You know, he's won a championship as the number 2 guy. Point forward, can score, play, make, defend, whatever you need, he can do it. I'm very tempted to put him in the A tier, but because we just haven't seen him healthy for a while, I'll put him in the B tier for now. But yeah, no disrespect to him. He's a great player. Next up, we've got Jaden McDaniels. I'm putting him right behind OG, I'll say. Jaden McDaniels is someone who is a great defender that nobody really speaks of. I feel like, low-key, he might be the best perimeter defender in the entire league today. And he's still young. He's still improving. Offensively, he's not great, but he's not a complete liability either. He's the perfect piece to start at that 3 spot next to Ant-Man, next to Karl Anthony Towns. He's very slept on, man. I can't say enough good things about him. He's a B tier guy for me. A lot of people, especially like if you don't know his game very well, you might put him lower or be like, who the fuck's this guy? But if you're familiar with him, if you've watched him play, he absolutely shuts shit down. So he belongs in B in my opinion. Next up, Keegan Murray. This one's interesting. Hey, I'm sorry, man. Maybe I'm disrespecting the fuck out of him, but I think he's a D tier player. Obviously, he was a rookie last season, and he's only going to be a second-year player this year. So if we're judging him based off of potential, he's definitely not a D. If we're talking about potential, he's right up there. But if you're looking at starting small forwards in the entire league, look at the list of guys that's in front of him right now. You know, he just isn't that great. Reason being is because his offense is very reliant on his three-point shot when it wasn't falling as well as it usually does, which we saw in the playoffs. He's a non-factor. He doesn't really offer much else. Obviously he's got the size, but he's not a great defender. Again, doesn't really facilitate the ball, can't really put the ball on the floor and create his own bucket. He's just very reliant on his three-point shooting. And because we saw that get exposed in the playoffs when he wasn't as efficient, he's a D for now. But obviously if he comes out next season, guns blazing, he can be a C, B, I don't know, man. But right now, based off of what I saw, he's a D tier. Let me know if I'm disrespecting him. But let's move on. We've got Keldon Johnson. He's a solid C for me. Very underrated. Gives you 20 points a game. Pretty good defense as well. It's just that he doesn't get much recognition because he plays for the Spurs. I'm going to put him in that C tier. Franz Wagner. I'm putting him in the B tier, man. This guy's got a shit ton of potential. Everyone can see it. He's going to be he's going to be around the league for a very, very long time. He's a very, very good scorer. And even though he's getting a bit overshadowed by Paolo, I feel like he's the better player right now, and I feel like long-term, I honestly feel like he's going to be the better player, but only time will tell. But I think he definitely belongs in that B tier. Next up, we've got RJ Barrett. Yeah, he's a C tier for me. He's not the most efficient scorer, not the best defensively. Shout out to him in the playoffs, though. He actually showed up, but no, I'm going to chuck him here. You know, fuck, I'll put him above Tobias Harris as well. He played with a lot of heart in the playoffs. Still very young. What is he? 23, 24 years old. He's only going to get better. He's shown that he can score 20 points per game, albeit inefficiently, but the only way is up for him anyway. So I'm putting him in that C tier. Next up, we've got Cam Johnson. Oh, he's a borderline C tier. I'm going to put him, borderline B tier. I'm putting him in the C tier as well. 3 and D wing. I can definitely see him, in a role where he's got a bit more offensive responsibility. Give you 18 points. Doesn't rebound the ball very well despite being 6'9". It will give you 18 points a game, maybe 5 rebounds. Shoot like 38% from 3. I like him a lot. It's just that he's always thought of as a young player, but the guy's low-key old. But high C, borderline B tier for me. You know what? I'll put him here for now. Next up, we've got Dort. I like him a lot. He's a very tough, hard-nosed defender. This guy will lock your shit up. I mean, obviously that's his best trait. Offers a bit, not as... 3-point shots a bit on and off, but defensively he brings the energy every single night. Great fit alongside the rest of the OKC roster. I'm putting him in the C tier. DeAndre Hunter. I'm putting him in the D tier, man. The reason why is because this guy, he will put up some decent looking numbers, but he's thought of as a 3 and D wing, doesn't shoot the 3 ball very well, isn't a very reliable defender. Some games he shoots well, but doesn't defend for shit. Other games he defends pretty well, doesn't shoot. He just hasn't put it together. He's a D tier guy for me. Look, we got Josh Green next. I'm putting him in the C tier. I love his potential, man, on the Mavs. I really, really do. I feel like he's going to be, to a lesser degree, like the OG Anunoby for the Mavs. He can slash, he can cut. He's a very switchable defender. He's athletic. He can shoot the 3 ball. He's going to be in the league for a very, very long time. I'm going to put him around here. Oh, yeah, I'll put him around here for now. But he fits a lot of rosters better than some of the guys I put above him. Next up, Shaedon Sharpe. Oh, a shit ton of potential, man. Fuck, what do I put him? C or D? Shit ton of potential. I'm putting him in C as well. We saw what he did at the end of the regular season last season when he, got an uptick in minutes. Maybe it's empty numbers, I don't know, but he's got a shit ton of potential. And he's only going to get better if, the keys to the Blazers offense is handed to him with the Damian Lillard trade. So I'm putting him in the C tier for now. I can't really justify putting him much higher, but he's here to stay. He's going to be he's going to be good. Next up, we got Buddy Hield, C tier guy, obviously a sharpshooter. What can I say? Yeah, it doesn't really offer much else, but he's one of the best at shooting the ball. So he's a C tier guy. Gordon Hayward, I hate to say this to Gordon, a few years ago I would have said this guy's the most underrated player in the league as long as he gets shots and touches. Right now, he's a D tier player, man. I still feel like the Charlotte Hornets are a lot better with him on the floor, but he can't really stay on the floor. It was a very inefficient season for him as a whole, and he's just steadily declining. I think he's going to be bought out and, he'll be in a different team next season. But that concludes my list, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Like I said, tell me how badly I fucked up. Or if you agree, hey, feel free to let me know that too. But I want to thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.